The sun had been merciless that day, turning the desert into a sea of shimmering glass. The wagon wheels creaked across the dry basin, their shadows stretching long and skeletal. Evelyn Carter sat near the back of the caravan, her fingers clutching the silver locket around her neck, the only thing she had left of her mother. Inside it was a faded sketch of a man she hadn't seen in 5 years, her brother Thomas, who'd vanished after the war. Rumor had it he'd been seen in the Arizona Territory, living somewhere near Apache lands. That rumor had been enough to drag her halfway across the country. The caravan master had warned her of raiders, but she hadn't imagined how quickly the promise of safety could shatter. They came just before dusk. A dust cloud on the horizon, horses galloping fast, gunfire cracking like thunder. The outlaws fell upon the wagons with cruel precision. Screams tore through the wind as men were shot, women dragged from the carriages and children silenced. Evelyn's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. She tried to run, but a rough hand seized her by the hair and threw her into the dirt. When the dust settled, a dozen captives huddled in fear while the raiders picked through the wreckage. Their leader, a lean man with a scar running from temple to jaw, grinned as he looked them over. "Sell 'em down south," he said, his voice carrying a wicked drawl. "Traders will pay well for a fine lady like her." Evelyn met his eyes and spat at his boots. The man only laughed. "Got spirit, huh? You'll fetch a higher price." That night, the outlaws tied their captives to a broken wagon and built a fire. Evelyn sat apart, her wrists raw from the rope. The desert stretched endless around them, dunes glowing under a pale, merciless moon. In the firelight, she noticed one of the men watching her too closely. His gaze lingered not on her face, but on the faint mark visible beneath her torn dress, the curved edge of a tattoo near her shoulder blade. She pulled the fabric higher, suddenly cold despite the heat. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory from long ago in Virginia. "This mark was not meant for shame, my darling. It's a gift from the sun. Never let anyone take it from you." Evelyn hadn't understood what she meant, only that the serpent coiled with a small sun had been on her skin since birth. Her mother used to trace it softly and whisper of a desert far away, of a people who would one day recognize it. Now, as she sat bound among strangers, that memory felt like madness. The raiders argued over her value, talking of Mexican buyers and soldiers who'd pay for white women with fire in their eyes. Evelyn clenched her teeth and silently promised herself she would not cry. Not here. Not in front of them. Before dawn, they broke camp, forcing the captives to walk. The air was sharp with dust, the smell of sweat and horses. Evelyn stumbled more than once, earning the crack of a whip across her back. Still, she kept moving. She thought of Thomas, of finding him, of home, anything to keep from falling apart. Hours later, the sky began to shift. The horizon darkened, not with storm clouds, but with movement, a distant rumble of hooves. One of the bandits cursed, raising a spyglass. His face turned white. "Apaches," he breathed. "Riders from the east," panic rippled through the camp. The raiders scrambled for their weapons as Evelyn lifted her head. Over the rise came a column of warriors, painted faces, feathers glinting, their horses moving in perfect unison. At their front rode a man unlike any she'd ever seen. Tall, bare-chested, his black hair bound with a strip of red cloth, eyes like obsidian, calm, powerful, ancient. The outlaws shouted warnings, but the Apache riders didn't slow. Arrows flew, then bullets, then chaos. Within minutes, the desert became a storm of dust and death. When the silence finally returned, the outlaws lay scattered. Evelyn blinked through the haze, heart pounding. She was still alive, and as the Apache king dismounted before her, his shadow falling across her trembling form, she felt the weight of his gaze, sharp, unreadable, settle on her shoulder where the edge of her tattoo had slipped into view. He did not speak. Not yet. But in his eyes she saw something dangerous, not desire but recognition. When Evelyn awoke, her mouth was dry and her wrists bruised from the ropes that bound her. The desert sun had risen high, a pitiless white blaze over an expanse of red sand. Around her lay the bodies of the slain outlaws, the remnants of the battle she had somehow survived. But the Apache riders were gone, their hoofprints swallowed by the shifting wind. She wasn't alone for long. A group of rough traders appeared on horseback, drawn by the scent of blood and opportunity. They stripped the field of anything valuable, weapons, coins, jewelry, and gathered the living captives. Evelyn was too weak to resist when they lifted her onto a mule and tied her hands again. She heard one of them say, "We'll take him to San Pablo. Someone'll pay for him there." Thus began another journey. 2 days across blistering wasteland toward a settlement Evelyn would come to know as the Market of Souls. The town lay hidden in a deep ravine, carved into the desert rock like a wound. Wooden stalls lined the central square, shaded by makeshift roofs of hide and cloth. It smelled of sweat, gunpowder, and despair. Men shouted in Spanish and English, their voices blending with the neighing of horses and the clink of coins. Evelyn was shoved into a pen with other captives, women from burned settlements, captured scouts, even a priest. Each had the same hollow eyes. She scanned the crowd for kindness and found none. The man in charge of the market, a corpulent trader with gold teeth and a broad sombrero, approached her. "Red hair, pale skin," he muttered in Spanish, turning her chin toward the light. "A rare flower in the desert. You'll fetch a fine price." He snapped his fingers, and one of his men ripped the dirty fabric from her shoulder to reveal her tattoo. The mark gleamed faintly against her sunburned skin, a coiled serpent encircling a rising sun. The trader squinted, then shrugged. Strange ink. Might make her worth more to someone superstitious. Evelyn yanked her arm away, glaring at him. "You'll regret touching me," she said, her voice hoarse but steady. The man only laughed. "They all say that." He ordered her brought to the center square for auction. The crowd gathered quickly. Soldiers, trappers, ranchers, even a few native scouts working for the Mexicans. Evelyn stood tall despite the filth and fear, her chin lifted, her eyes burning with defiance. The auctioneer's voice rang out above the noise. "Una mujer blanca, educada, jara como el oro." Bidding began, coins flashing in rough hands. Evelyn heard words she didn't understand. Offers shouted in both English and Spanish. A wave of nausea rolled through her as the trader lifted her arm, spinning her like a prize mare. Then the noise changed. It wasn't just the crowd. The air itself seemed to still. A tremor passed through the square as hooves thundered from the canyon mouth. Dust rose. Someone cried out, "Apaches!" Panic erupted. Traders scrambled for weapons, guards shouted orders, captives ducked to the ground. Evelyn lifted her head as riders poured into the square, their horses painted with red clay, their spears glinting. At their head rode the man she had seen before, the Apache king. He was taller than she remembered, his presence commanding even amid the chaos. His warriors fanned out with precision, forming a circle around the market. Not one bullet was fired. The crowd fell into stunned silence as he dismounted. The gold-toothed trader stepped forward, trembling but trying to mask his fear. "You cannot take what is mine," he barked in broken Apache. "These are my slaves." The king's eyes narrowed. He said something low in his own tongue, and 2 warriors dragged the man aside. No one dared intervene. Then he turned to Evelyn. Her heart pounded as his dark gaze swept over her, fierce yet calm. For a long moment he said nothing. Then slowly, he reached out and touched her shoulder where the tattoo shone in the sunlight. The crowd murmured in confusion. The king's expression changed, from suspicion to recognition, almost reverence. He spoke in English this time, his voice deep and certain. "She is not for sale." The trader sputtered. "But," the Apache king raised his hand. "She bears the mark of the sun serpent woman. She is sacred to my people." His eyes never left Evelyn's as he added, with finality that made the air itself seem to tighten, "She will be my wife." Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Evelyn's blood turned to fire. She met his gaze with fury and disbelief. But somewhere, beneath the fear, something ancient stirred. It was as if the tattoo itself had been waiting for this moment. The desert wind carried a biting chill despite the sun blazing overhead. Evelyn's wrists still smarted from the ropes, and her legs were stiff from hours in the pen. She kept her head high, refusing to kneel, refusing to show weakness, even as every eye in the market seemed to weigh her like a coin on a scale. Yet when the Apache king, Chief Taza, approached, something inside her shivered. He moved with a calm authority that demanded attention, each step measured and deliberate. Evelyn's first instinct was to look away, to protect herself. She tugged her dress higher over her shoulder, hiding the delicate tattoo that had drawn him here. But it was too late. The wind shifted, carrying her sleeve down just enough to reveal the coiled serpent entwined with the rising sun, a mark that had been on her since birth. Taza froze mid-step. His dark eyes widened for the briefest moment, then narrowed with a mixture of awe and recognition. The commotion of the market fell away for him, as if the rest of the world no longer existed. Even the traders and soldiers who had tried to dominate her paused, sensing the shift in power. The tattoo was no ordinary mark. It matched the ancient carvings in Taza's tribe, symbols that appeared only once every generation. According to the legends whispered by the elders, a woman bearing the sun serpent mark was destined to unite the tribes and bring a period of peace and prosperity. Seeing it on a pale-skinned woman in a place so far from the sacred lands was beyond comprehension. He stepped closer, his movements graceful yet filled with undeniable authority. "This woman is not for sale," he declared in a voice that carried over the crowd like rolling thunder. The market traders froze, uncertain whether the man spoke of law or legend. "She belongs to my people. To me," Taza added, each word deliberate, heavy with meaning. Evelyn felt a rush of panic. Her life had been in her own hands, fraught with danger, and now she was being claimed by a man whose people had been the stuff of frontier legends, fierce, untamed, and deadly. "You do not know me," she said, her voice trembling, though she tried to mask it with anger. I am not yours to claim." Taza's eyes softened ever so slightly. He didn't look angry nor cruel. Instead, there was reverence, a sense that he was confronting destiny itself. His gaze fell on her tattoo again, and he murmured a phrase in his native tongue. The elders later explained that it was a blessing and recognition, a proclamation that she had been chosen. The crowd remained hushed, though whispers spread like wildfire. Some murmured about the legends of the sun serpent woman, others about the boldness of the Apache king. All around, the traders and soldiers sensed they were witnessing something extraordinary. Evelyn's heart raced, a mixture of fear and disbelief. She had never known the significance of the mark her mother had left on her skin. It had always seemed like a simple birthmark, an oddity she had hidden from curious eyes. Now it was the reason for her survival, the reason she had been spared from a life sold into slavery. "You will come with me," Taza said finally, his tone firm yet calm. There was no negotiation in it, no threat, and only certainty. "You will not remain here among traders who would see you as property. You will be with my people. You will be my wife." Evelyn's defiance flared a wild, stubborn fire. She pulled back, meeting his gaze directly. "I am no one's wife," she spat, though her voice shook. "I will not bow to a prophecy, nor to fear, nor to you." For a moment the world held its breath. Taza did not raise his hand. He did not strike. Instead, he allowed silence to speak, a calm and unyielding presence that seemed to wrap around her like a shield. Then with a nod he motioned for the other warriors. They untied her, yet still circled to keep her within their protection. The market traders and soldiers backed away, realizing that any attempt to interfere would mean confronting a living legend. Evelyn, trembling and furious, found herself lifted onto a horse beside Taza. She sat rigid, her mind a whirlwind of fear, disbelief, and something more, a strange, unsettling anticipation. As the first rays of sunlight glinted on the desert rocks, Taza led her away from the market toward the unknown lands of his people. Behind them, the whispers of the crowd lingered. The sun serpent woman. The king has claimed her. Destiny unfolds. Evelyn did not yet know whether she would survive the journey, nor if she could ever accept what was being asked of her. All she knew was that the tattoo had changed everything, and her life, as she knew it, had ended in that moment. The desert stretched endlessly, a sea of ochre and gold under the unforgiving sun. Evelyn Carter rode stiffly on the horse beside Taza, her wrists still tender from the ropes that had bound her. The first rays of morning caught the glint of her tattoo, the sun serpent mark, and she felt a strange warmth emanate from it, almost as if it were alive. She had spent her life hiding it, never imagining it could define her fate. Now it was the reason she had survived, and the reason she was claimed by a man whose presence filled the horizon like the rising sun itself. Evelyn's chest tightened with a mixture of fear and indignation. "I do not belong to you," she said, her voice trembling, though she tried to mask it with defiance. Her gaze, fierce and unyielding, met Taza's. Taza, the Apache king, did not speak immediately. He rode with a measured calm, his dark eyes focused on the winding trail ahead, yet occasionally flicking toward her, assessing, weighing. He did not need to speak to command obedience. His presence alone demanded it. Every movement of his body exuded control, power, and something more, a quiet reverence that unsettled Evelyn. Hours passed. The landscape shifted from barren plains to jagged mesas and narrow canyons. They rode in silence, the only sounds the creaking of saddles, the distant call of hawks, and the whispering wind. Evelyn's mind raced. She had imagined dangers on the journey west, but she had never envisioned a scenario like this, being taken into the heart of Apache territory, a land rumored to swallow outsiders whole. When night fell, Taza finally spoke. "You are not harmed," he said quietly. "My people will respect you. You are not a prisoner, Evelyn Carter. You are chosen." Evelyn laughed bitterly, a sound that made the horse jump. "Chosen? I was nearly sold into slavery yesterday. And now you claim me as, what, a wife? I do not even know you." Taza's gaze was unwavering. "You carry the mark of our prophecy, the sun serpent woman. Your destiny is tied to my people and to me. We do not follow whims. We follow what the spirits have foretold." She turned away, gripping the reins tightly. She was a woman who had survived floods of grief, the chaos of war, and now the horrors of capture. Yet something about Taza unsettled her. A strange recognition, a pull she could not explain. Her mind refused to accept it, but her body betrayed her curiosity, trembling beneath the desert night sky. They camped in a sheltered canyon. Warriors silently circled the fire, their silhouettes sharp and proud in the flickering light. Evelyn was given food, warm bread, roasted game, water, and a blanket to shield her from the night chill. Despite her pride, she could not help noticing the careful attention with which she was treated. No hand strayed to harm her, no warrior spoke harshly. She realized this was not the brutality she had feared. It was reverence. Taza sat across the fire, his dark eyes reflecting the flames. "Do not mistake my claim for ownership," he said softly. "I will not force you, nor will I betray the trust of my people. But you must come with me willingly, or at least without harm. You cannot remain with the traitors. You are part of something greater than you understand." Evelyn's gaze fell to the tattoo, the mark of prophecy blazing faintly in the firelight. She remembered her mother's words. This mark was not meant for shame. It is a gift, yet she did not feel gifted. She felt trapped, pulled by forces she could neither see nor resist. Days passed. The journey tested her stamina, her courage, her patience. Each night she learned small things. The rhythm of the desert, the ways Taza's warriors communicated without words, the honor embedded in their silent vigilance. Evelyn's fear began to mingle with respect, though she would never admit it aloud, and all the while the tattoo seemed to hum beneath her skin, a faint warmth that reminded her that she was no ordinary captive. She was something else, something chosen, something that had survived a life of danger for a purpose she did not yet understand. By the time the sun rose on the fourth day, the shadow of the Apache stronghold appeared in the distance, a hidden valley of jagged cliffs and winding trails. Evelyn felt her heart hammer, a mixture of dread and anticipation. Ahead lay not just the heart of Taza's people, but a destiny she could neither flee nor deny. The desert had claimed many, but it had spared her. Now it demanded she step fully into the unknown. The first sight of the hidden valley stole Evelyn's breath. Beyond the rugged cliffs, the land opened into a lush canyon unlike anything she had imagined in the harsh desert. A river wound through the valley, its water sparkling under the mid-morning sun, and groves of cottonwood swayed gently in the breeze. Birds sang in rich, unfamiliar harmonies, and the air smelled of earth, herbs, and something faintly sweet, a fragrance that spoke of life, of home, of a world untouched by war and cruelty. Taza rode ahead, confident and steady, leading her along a narrow trail that wound down into the valley. The warriors surrounding them rode with silent discipline, their painted faces gleaming with ceremonial symbols. Evelyn's heart thudded with a mixture of awe, fear, and defiance. Every step drew her deeper into a world she had only heard of in whispers, a world that promised beauty and danger in equal measure. When they reached the heart of the valley, a wide clearing revealed the Apache stronghold, an intricate series of dwellings and communal areas carved into the cliffs and nestled among trees and rocks. Smoke rose in thin columns from small hearths, and figures moved gracefully through the spaces, carrying out daily tasks with quiet purpose. Evelyn could see women tending children, men crafting tools, elders seated in meditative silence. The sense of community and balance was overwhelming, and yet she felt like an intruder, a stranger whose very presence disrupted the harmony. Taza dismounted and approached the center of the gathering. "This is your home now," he said, his voice carrying authority but not cruelty. "You are among my people. You are safe here, as long as you respect the ways of our ancestors." Evelyn's legs trembled as she followed, but her pride remained unbroken. "Safe? You call this safety? You've dragged me across the desert, claiming me as if I were a prize. I am no one's possession." Taza's expression softened, yet his gaze remained firm. "You are not a possession. You are the woman of the prophecy, Evelyn. The sun serpent mark guides your path. It has brought you to us for a reason beyond either of our comprehension." The elders, who had gathered silently, watched her closely. One stepped forward, an old man with deep lines etched across his face, eyes sharp as flint. He studied the tattoo, then bowed slightly. "She bears the sign," he said in a low, reverent tone. "The one foretold to unite the tribes. She has come to us as the spirits intended." Evelyn felt a shiver run through her. The words seemed unreal, yet the gravity in their voices left no room for doubt. She had lived a life of uncertainty and struggle, and yet now it seemed that forces far older than her own will were directing her steps. Days passed, and she began to learn the ways of the stronghold. She observed the rituals of the tribe, the careful balance of work, respect, and honor. She discovered that the tattoo on her shoulder was more than a symbol. It was a connection. Elders whispered that it was linked to their sacred stone, a relic that had stood in the heart of the valley for generations. It represented the unity of earth, sun, and serpent, life, power, and wisdom intertwined. Evelyn was introduced to the river, where she learned to gather herbs and cleanse herself in its sparkling waters. She followed the children as they played along the banks, noticing the warmth in their laughter, the ease of their movements. The Apache people did not treat her as a prisoner. They treated her as a part of a story that had long been waiting to unfold. Even Taza's demeanor shifted subtly. He allowed her space, never forcing her into obedience, yet there was an unspoken expectation that she would grow into the role the prophecy demanded. His eyes often found hers in silent communication, a mixture of challenge, respect, and something deeper she could not yet name. That night, Evelyn lay under a sky bursting with stars, the sounds of the canyon around her. The tattoo on her shoulder seemed to pulse faintly in the moonlight, almost as if the desert itself were speaking through her skin. She realized that her life had changed irrevocably, that she had stepped into a world of legend, destiny, and danger. And though she would not admit it aloud, a small, stubborn part of her felt. She was no longer merely a captive. She was something more, something chosen, something that could not be denied. Life in the valley was both breathtaking and bewildering. Evelyn Carter had survived ambushes, capture, and long treks across the desert, but nothing had prepared her for the subtle complexities of Apache society. Every day presented lessons in patience, observation, and humility. The tribe's rhythm was foreign yet precise. Work, honor, ritual, and respect intertwined seamlessly, leaving no room for idle arrogance or ignorance. Evelyn's sharp mind and fierce will, once her greatest assets, now often seemed clumsy in the face of centuries-old traditions. The first real test came when Naya, a proud and skilled young Apache woman, confronted her. Naya's dark eyes glimmered with suspicion and barely concealed jealousy. She had been one of Taza's closest kin, and many in the tribe had quietly expected that she might one day become his wife. Now a pale-skinned outsider with a tattoo no one had seen before threatened to disrupt not only the prophecy but the delicate social balance. "You do not belong here," Naya said one morning as Evelyn helped gather firewood. Her voice was calm, almost melodic, yet it carried the weight of accusation. "You were chosen by your mark, but marks alone do not make one worthy of this people." Evelyn squared her shoulders, meeting Naya's gaze without flinching. "I do not pretend to understand your ways," she admitted. "But I am no harm. I will learn, and I will not dishonor your people." Naya's eyes narrowed, skepticism evident. "You speak well," she replied. "But words are easy. Courage is shown by action." Evelyn didn't realize the depth of that statement until later that day. A child had wandered too close to the river chasing a rabbit and slipped. The current was swift, the water frigid, and panic flared among the women nearby. Without thinking, Evelyn dove into the river, pulling the boy from the swirling water. He coughed and sputtered, but he was safe. The elders, who had watched silently, nodded approvingly. Even Naya's expression softened, a flicker of respect replacing the suspicion. It was the first of many lessons. The tribe valued action and courage over words, understanding over rebellion. Evelyn began to see that survival in the canyon demanded not only strength but humility. She studied the herbs along the riverbank, learned the signs of the desert animals, and absorbed the subtle language of body and gesture the tribe used to communicate silently. She started to see Taza's patience and wisdom in a new light, not as oppression but as guidance. Yet tension simmered beneath the surface. She was the Sun Serpent woman, foretold to unite tribes and heal old wounds, but prophecy alone did not grant acceptance. Some whispered, questioning whether a white woman could truly embody the legend. Others, though quiet, watched her every movement, testing her resolve. Taza remained a constant presence, on a mixture of teacher, protector, and observer. He did not coddle her, nor did he command her. He challenged her understanding gently yet firmly, letting her prove her courage and wisdom without forcing submission. Every glance he gave her seemed to carry a question, a silent measurement. How far could she grow? Could she rise to the destiny that her tattoo demanded? One evening, as the sun dipped behind the cliffs, Evelyn sat beside the river watching the children play and the women prepare evening meals. The soft ripple of water and the faint scent of sage calmed her, yet inside she felt the weight of expectation. The prophecy was no longer a distant idea. It had become a living truth pressing upon her every step. For the first time, Evelyn realized that to survive, and to fulfill the destiny her mark had chosen, she would need more than courage. She would need heart, empathy, and the willingness to bridge two worlds, her own, foreign and chaotic, and the world of the Apache, ancient and sacred. Her trials had only just begun. The clash of blood and culture was not over. But for the first time, Evelyn understood that she could endure, and perhaps even thrive, in this new, wild, and unforgiving world. The canyon lay bathed in the amber glow of dusk, shadows stretching long across the rugged terrain. Evelyn Carter moved quietly among the warriors, her hands deftly arranging herbs for the evening fires. She had grown accustomed to the rhythms of the stronghold, yet a restless tension tugged at her heart. A tension that had nothing to do with the desert or the prophecy. Taza, the Apache king, watched her from a distance. From the moment he had claimed her, he had sensed the gravity of her presence, not merely in prophecy but in something far more elusive. The Sun Serpent mark had identified her as chosen, yet the heart, he realized, could not be commanded. Desire was a wild current, far more difficult to navigate than prophecy or ritual. For weeks he had wrestled with his emotions. Duty demanded that he protect the prophecy at all costs, yet every interaction with Evelyn ignited something within him that he had never experienced. He admired her courage, her defiance, her unwavering spirit, yet admiration had blossomed into longing, and longing had become a dangerous fire he could neither deny nor fully control. That evening, he approached her as she knelt by the river, the light of the setting sun catching the tattoo on her shoulder. It seemed to glow faintly, as if resonating with the tension between them. He spoke softly so only she could hear. "You have grown stronger than I imagined. Yet you do not know the weight you carry." Evelyn looked up, meeting his gaze with a mixture of curiosity and defiance.
"I carry nothing I did not earn," she said.
Her voice was steady, though a flush rose to her cheeks. "I am not a prize nor a tool of prophecy. I am myself." Taza knelt beside her, careful not to crowd her space, yet every movement radiated an undeniable intensity. "I do not see you as a tool," he said, his voice low, almost reverent. "I see you as what the prophecy could never show. A person of courage, of spirit, of heart. You are not merely chosen for the tribe. You have chosen me, even without knowing it." Evelyn's defiance wavered. She had long resisted the idea that her life was anything but her own. Yet the truth in his words struck a chord she could not deny. She had chosen to survive, chosen to learn, chosen to act with honor among the Apaches. And unknowingly, her choices had intertwined her fate with Taza's in ways she could not yet comprehend. Taza's hand hovered near hers, a question unspoken in his dark eyes. He had fought for years to control his heart, to maintain the delicate balance of leadership and duty. To love her openly risked judgment, dissent, and distraction from the prophecy. Yet the fire in him would not be quelled. The sun serpent woman was more than destiny. She was real, breathing beside him, defiant, alive. I do not know if this is right, he murmured almost to himself. The prophecy binds us, yet it does not command the heart. And the heart? The heart is treacherous. Evelyn reached out, lightly brushing her fingers against his. The gesture was simple, yet it carried defiance, trust, and a challenge. The heart is dangerous, she whispered. But sometimes danger is worth it. Taza's eyes darkened, a storm of emotions swirling behind them. He wanted to speak, to confess the intensity of his desire. Yet he feared that words could shatter what the prophecy had ordained. Instead, he let silence linger, letting the connection between them speak louder than any declaration. For the first time, Taza realized that destiny was not simply a matter of prophecy or ritual. It was living, evolving, and often uncontrollable. It required courage, not only hers but his. As night fell and the stars began to glimmer over the canyon, both understood the unspoken truth. Their bond would not be dictated solely by the mark, the prophecy, or even duty. It would be forged in the fire of choices, trials, and undeniable desire. Taza rose, his hand brushing briefly against hers, a silent promise and warning. The path ahead is perilous, he said, his voice heavy with authority and longing. But I will walk it with you, Evelyn, if you will let me. Evelyn met his gaze, defiance softened by the faintest trace of trust. She could not know the storms ahead, the battles, betrayals, and sacrifices, but she understood one truth clearly. The king's heart, like her own, had been irrevocably claimed. And in the quiet of the canyon, the prophecy began to pulse with life beyond destiny alone, a life shaped by courage, love, and the unbreakable will of two souls intertwined. The first light of dawn barely touched the canyon when the alarm sounded. Evelyn stirred, her body tense, every sense alert. She had grown used to the rhythms of the stronghold, the gentle calls of the river, the whispers of children, the quiet footsteps of warriors. But today those sounds were replaced by the sharp clatter of hooves and the urgent cries of sentinels. They come, one of Taza's scouts shouted, pointing toward the east ridge. Smoke and dust blurred the horizon. A company of U.S. soldiers, guided by bounty hunters, advanced with weapons raised. They believed Evelyn had been kidnapped, that the Apache king had taken her by force, and they intended to reclaim her, by whatever means necessary. Evelyn's stomach tightened. For months she had adapted to the ways of the tribe, earned their tentative respect, and begun to understand the delicate balance of life here. And now all that could be undone in moments of violence. Her pulse raced as she glanced at Taza. He was already commanding his warriors, his voice steady and unyielding, issuing orders in quick, precise bursts. Protect the people. Keep the children inside. Do not fire until I give the signal. His calm authority radiated through the chaos, anchoring Evelyn even as fear threatened to overtake her. The attack began in a torrent. Horses reared, bullets ricocheted off stone, and arrows whistled through the air. Smoke and dust mingled with the cries of men, the shouts of the warriors, and the frantic pleas of the captives. Evelyn's heart pounded, yet instinct drove her forward. She could not remain hidden. She would not let blood be shed unnecessarily, not when reason and courage could intervene. She grabbed a white cloth and waved it high, shouting in both English and Apache, trying to make herself heard over the roar of battle. "Stop! Do not fight! I am here. Do not harm my people." The soldiers faltered, uncertain. Their orders had not accounted for this. One young soldier hesitated, lowering his rifle as the white cloth caught the morning light. Evelyn's voice grew stronger, carrying across the canyon. "I am Evelyn Carter. I belong here with the Apache. Harm him and you harm me." At that moment, an arrow grazed Taza's shoulder. Pain flared across his body, but he refused to cry out. He turned to her, dark eyes locking with hers. "Stay with me," he commanded, even as he fought off attackers. Ignoring fear, Evelyn moved through the chaos, reaching for Taza's side. She pressed her hands to his wound, steadying him as he continued to lead the defense. The warriors, inspired by her courage, fought with renewed intensity, driving back the intruders. The battle raged until the sun rose fully, casting the canyon in brilliant light. The attackers, realizing they could not break the stronghold and unwilling to risk further losses, retreated. Silence fell over the valley. broken only by the ragged breathing of the survivors and the crackling of fires. Evelyn sank to her knees beside Taza, her hands still pressed to his wound. Blood stained her fingers, yet she did not flinch. "You are hurt," she whispered, voice trembling. Taza's hand found hers, gripping gently. "You saved us," he said, his voice low but steady. "You saved me." Pain and pride mingled in his dark gaze, and for a moment words were unnecessary. The elders and warriors gathered, their eyes a mixture of awe and gratitude. Evelyn had proven herself not just by surviving, but by acting with courage and clarity when it mattered most. Her presence had shifted the tide, not just in battle, but in the hearts of those around her. As dawn spread over the valley, Evelyn realized the truth. She was no longer merely a captive or a pawn of prophecy. She was a force, a bridge between worlds, a protector, a part of something greater than herself. And beside her, Taza remained, wounded yet unbroken, their bond forged not only in destiny but in the fire of shared danger. The desert, harsh and unforgiving, had tested them both. And in its wake, something new, unshakable and alive, had begun to grow between them. The canyon was quiet now, but the air was thick with the aftermath of battle, smoke curling lazily from smoldering brush, and the coppery scent of blood lingering faintly. Evelyn sat beside Taza, whose dark hair was damp with sweat and blood from his wound. Despite the danger he had faced, his face was calm, but she could see the tension beneath the surface, the tight lines of a warrior unused to surrender. She had refused to leave his side since the dawn attack. Every movement, every breath she took was devoted to tending the wound on his shoulder, cleaning it and applying the herbs she had learned from the riverbank. Her hands worked with quiet precision, steady even as her heart raced with fear and something far more tender. The elders had watched silently at first, then approached cautiously. One of them, a woman whose hair was streaked with silver, placed a hand lightly on Evelyn's shoulder. "Your mark? It guides you. Do not doubt your power," she whispered. Evelyn nodded, unsure if the words were meant for her or for the tattoo that seemed to glow faintly beneath the skin, the sun serpent mark, now pulsing as though alive. As she worked, Evelyn felt warmth radiate from the tattoo, spreading through her shoulder and into her chest. The sensation was faint at first, like the touch of sunlight on cold stone, then grew stronger, almost as if the mark itself were lending her strength. She closed her eyes, whispering a silent prayer to the spirits, feeling the bond between her and Taza deepen with each pulse of energy. Hours passed. The wound, though severe, began to close beneath her hands. She had used all the knowledge she had gleaned from the herbs and rituals of the tribe, and now it seemed something older, something the tattoo itself carried, was assisting. The warmth of the mark intensified, filling her with a sense of connection, purpose, and a strange certainty she had never known. Taza's breathing evened, and his eyes flickered open. They were dark, stormy, yet softened by a new light when they met hers. "You saved me," he murmured, his voice hoarse but steady. How can one woman carry such strength?" Evelyn shook her head, a faint smile touching her lips. "I did not carry it alone," she said. "Something beyond us guided me. Perhaps it was you, perhaps it was this," she added, glancing at her shoulder. The tattoo shimmered faintly in the dying light, a symbol now alive with power she could not yet comprehend. Taza reached for her hand, gripping it with a strength that belied his exhaustion. "I have seen visions," he said softly, voice low. "Since the first moment I saw your mark, I dreamed of you, in the canyon beneath the sun standing in firelight. I did not understand, until now. You are more than prophecy, you are life itself." Evelyn's chest tightened. She had known danger, fear, and despair, but never had she felt the raw weight of destiny and love intertwining so completely. She realized then that the Sun Serpent woman was not merely a legend or a mark. She was a living bridge, a force capable of uniting not just Taza's people but two worlds. Night fell, and the stars shone brilliantly over the valley. Evelyn leaned against Taza, her fingers still entwined with his. The tattoo's glow faded to a soft warmth, a reminder that while power could awaken, it also required patience and care. The elders approached, their faces solemn yet approving. One spoke in the ancient tongue, and Taza translated softly. "The spirits acknowledge her. The prophecy moves forward." You are as much a part of this destiny as he is, Evelyn. Evelyn swallowed hard, a mix of fear, pride, and awe coursing through her. She had come to the desert a captive, a stranger to this land and its people. Now she was something else entirely. Healer, bridge, chosen of the spirits, and a woman bound irrevocably to the Apache king. Taza's gaze met hers, unwavering and tender. Together, he said, his voice low and resolute, we will fulfill what has been written, and what we will write ourselves. And under the vast desert sky, with stars watching silently, Evelyn understood the truth. Destiny had found her, but love had claimed her heart. The sun rose over the Apache stronghold, bathing the valley in a golden light that shimmered off the cliffs and danced across the river. Evelyn Carter stood at the edge of the high bluff, the wind tugging at her hair, her eyes tracing the vast expanse of desert that stretched beyond the canyon. She was no longer the frightened captive dragged across the plains. She was the Sun Serpent woman, chosen, revered, and now fully embraced by the people she had once thought alien. Beside her, Taza, the Apache king, stood silently, his dark eyes scanning the horizon with a mixture of pride and determination. His shoulder bore the faint scar of the battle at dawn, but his spirit remained unbroken. The bond between them had grown in fire and trial, in the shared fear of capture, the clash of cultures, the quiet nights of healing, and the recognition of destiny's hand. Their connection was no longer just prophecy. It was love, forged in the crucible of survival and tested by courage. Evelyn adjusted the folds of her tunic, revealing the sun serpent tattoo that had defined her journey. It glowed faintly in the morning light, a living symbol of power, wisdom, and unity. She had come to understand that it was more than a mark. It was a guide, a bridge, and a reminder of the life she had survived to claim. The people of the stronghold gathered below. Warriors, women, and children looked up at her with a mixture of reverence, trust, and expectation. Evelyn took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their eyes upon her, the weight of destiny balanced by the knowledge that she had earned her place among them. She had faced fear, death, and doubt, yet she had emerged not only alive but transformed. Taza stepped closer, his hand brushing hers in a quiet, grounding touch. They look to you, Evelyn, he said, voice low but carrying across the bluff. Not because you are chosen, but because you have shown them strength, courage, and heart. You are their queen and my partner in every sense. Evelyn's eyes met his. She felt the fire of his words settle in her chest, a warmth that matched the pulse of the tattoo. I am no queen of crowns or gold, she said softly, but I will serve these people. I will protect them, as they have protected me, and I will walk beside you, Taza, not as a prize, but as an equal. The elders stepped forward, presenting gifts of feathers, beads, and sacred stones. They spoke words of blessing, welcoming her fully into the tribe, acknowledging her as the one who would unite, heal, and lead alongside the king. Evelyn accepted the gifts with reverence, understanding that her journey was no longer about survival alone. It was about legacy, responsibility, and the future of a people she had come to love. That evening, as the sun dipped below the canyon walls and painted the sky in hues of red and violet, Taza and Evelyn stood together at the riverbank. The children played along the water, the warriors prepared for evening rituals, and the stronghold thrummed with life. Evelyn slipped her hand into Taza's, feeling the steady strength of his grip. I never imagined this life, she admitted quietly. Her voice carried only to him. I thought I would be lost, sold, forgotten. Instead, I found a home and someone worth trusting with all of me. Taza's lips curved into a rare, tender smile. And I thought I was bound only to duty, he said. But you have shown me that heart and destiny can coexist. Together we are stronger than either alone. As the moon rose over the canyon, bathing the valley in silver light, Evelyn felt the last remnants of fear slip away. She was no longer a captive. She was no longer an outsider. She was the queen of the desert, chosen not just by prophecy but by courage, love, and the unyielding will to survive, and at her side, the Apache king, her equal, her protector, her love, held her hand as they gazed out across the land that had tested them, shaped them, and brought them together. The desert had been merciless, but it had given them a destiny worth every trial. Together they would face the future, unbroken, unstoppable, and bound by a bond that neither time nor legend could undo. The prophecy had been fulfilled. The Sun Serpent woman had risen, And she would reign, not with fear but with courage, wisdom, and a heart as wild and untamed as the desert itself.